You've spent $300 million of taxpayer money on illegal immigrants. You're putting the interest of illegal immigrants above the interest of taxpayers in Chicago.
Flashback.
Close a $500 million gap in the city's 2024 budget.
Personnel, pensions, and resources to address the migrant crisis, all costing the city millions and millions of dollars.
A few moments later.
Right now, Chicago is facing a $1.1 billion budget gap for 2026.
The city is grappling with a $1.1 billion budget shortfall.
We have reached a point now where there's no return.
A frank admission from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. A looming budget crisis could be even worse than expected without new taxes or cuts to city services.
So let's talk about what's going on in Chicago, because the chickens have come home to roost. Here's a quick word from this video sponsor, Brickhouse Nutrition. Brickhouse Nutrition's Labor Day sale just went live. For a few days only, you can save 25% off everything with the code LABORDAY25. Start the fall off strong, reboot your health, and save big. This massive sale includes their best-selling weight management formula, Lean. Doctor-formulated Lean is designed to support metabolism, reduce appetite, and help curb cravings without prescriptions. When you click on the QR code, check out Field of Greens. It's their daily superfruit and vegetable blend made with USDA certified organic fruits and veggies. And they've also got some customer faves like Radiance, the collagen booster, and their new Brickhouse Whey protein, all part of the 25% off, but only for a limited time. Kick off the fall feeling stronger and more confident than ever. Head over to brickhousenutrition.com and use code LABORDAY25 for that 25% off. That's brickhousenutrition.com, code LABORDAY25. Or you can just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Now, back to the video. All right, so this is the 57th mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Now, I don't have to tell you, Chicago is a Democrat stronghold, and he goes all in on Democrat policies. Like, this guy doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. Now, Brandon Johnson took office during the migrant crisis. Now, for those of you with short memories, when Biden was president, he opened up the borders, allowing millions of people to cross the borders illegally.
Tonight, nearly 10,000 migrants a day. That is what federal officials say they are encountering at the U.S. southern border on average. In December, that's among the highest numbers ever recorded. And with multiple border entry points remaining closed as the surge at the southern border escalates, U.S. officials now warning that the situation is nearing a, quote, breaking point. Ed Lavandera is out front.
Apprehensions of migrants crossing the southern U.S. border are once again reaching record levels. A Department of Homeland Security official tells CNN the average number of encounters in the last week is 9,600 per day.
3 years ago, 689 Chinese migrants crossed the southern border. Last year, that number soared to over 37,000. Part of an explosion of migrants coming here from all over the globe.
This morning, tensions escalating on the Texas border. Dramatic new video shows a struggle between Border Patrol and migrants in El Paso. The video shows dozens of migrants pulling aside a razor wire fence, then pushing their way past a handful of Border Patrol agents.
Now, even though all of that was happening, Brandon Johnson was all in for the migrants.
We know the strength of a city is determined by how we treat the most vulnerable. And so we choose to be a strong city. We must reject a zero-sum formulation between investing in those who have been here for decades and supporting those who have been sit here on a bus even this morning. We can do both, Chicago, and we can all thrive together.
Now, what he's referring to is that the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, started shipping migrants to sanctuary cities, places that said they wanted more migrants, and Chicago was one of those places.
Local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration. Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C. We are sending them to the United States Capitol, where the Biden administration will be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across our border.
Well, it has happened again. Another bus of migrants has been sent here to Los Angeles.
39 asylum seekers arrived by bus at Union Station today, sent by Texas, including 21 children.
Another wave of migrants arrived in New York City today. merecemos una oportunidad.
More than 4,000 have come since May, a metaphorical message from Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Texas has sent another bus of migrants away from the state, this one arriving in Chicago last night. It comes after the state has sent more than 8,000 migrants to New York and Washington, D.C.
Then all of a sudden it became the migrant crisis and they started declaring states of emergency.
This morning, the mayor of Washington, D.C. has requested the help of the National Guard to assist with the buses of migrants arriving to her city.
Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey has declared a state of emergency to address the state's growing migrant crisis. The governor says there are over 20,000 people being temporarily housed across the state.
Our top story, another bus of migrants arrived today in Los Angeles and were taken to St. Anthony's Croatian Church for processing.
Back in New York, the mayor had a stark message this month.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City.
Increasingly, the migrant crisis is being felt far from the border, including cities like Chicago, where officials say resources are running thin.
Now, with the migrant crisis also came an economic crisis, because how are you going to take care of hundreds of thousands of people who just come across the border, have no money, have no means of taking care of themselves? How is a city like Chicago supposed to deal with? Well, they opened their purses. The mayor of Chicago spent over $600 million taking care of migrants, and he was even called out about how much they spent by Congress.
The immigration crisis has strained city and state resources. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson defending spending taxpayer dollars on maintaining a welcoming city while being interrogated by the House Oversight Committee in Washington today.
You're the mayor of Chicago. Do you think that your residents or the residents of your state should be paying for that more than they should be paying for their own needs, their own roads, their own public safety?
The people of Chicago elected me as the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago, and we serve all the residents of the city of Chicago.
But that service comes with a cost. According to data obtained by the ABC 7i team, since September of 2022, the city has paid out $638.7 million in vendor contracts for new arrivals.
Mayor Johnson, in the last 4 years, how much has Chicago spent on care for illegal aliens?
So since 2022, since the governor of Texas was shipping individuals to cities across this country, the city's budget, roughly 1% of the city's budget over the course of 4 years.
That 1% comes out to about $625 million over the past 4 years.
Now, Mayor Johnson essentially did this to himself. He spent all that money taking care of migrants and now has this big budget deficit. So he decided to attempt to raise property taxes, $300 million in new property taxes, to force the taxpayers to go back into their pockets and give him more money so he can continue to take care of the migrants.
Now to NBC5 investigates, which for months has followed the money trail tied to Chicago's migrant mission. Total spending now tops more than $400 million.
Now, despite the creation of a city spending website, it's still not exactly clear where all of that money has gone.
Mayor Brandon Johnson was more than 40 minutes into his speech before he broke the bad news to homeowners across the city.
This budget currently includes a property tax increase of $300 million to fund and keep our commitment to fund not just our pension contributions, but to fund the future of our city.
Now, this was hard for Mayor Brandon Johnson because previously, while he was running for mayor, he said this:
I won't raise your property taxes.
Then candidate for mayor, Brandon Johnson.
The people of Chicago want to know, will you raise a tax, whether it be a property tax or implement something else?
Well, it's interesting. No one has ever asked me if I'm going to raise a tax.
In January, we sat down and asked the mayor multiple times if he'd use a property tax increase to pay for the city's debts. At the time, one of the biggest concerns was paying for the migrant crisis.
So you can commit to you not raising property taxes, regardless of how bad the situation gets.
Okay, I've stopped the video. He's either going to say yes or no. He's going to say a lot of words, but either it's going to be a yes or no. Now, I'm assuming if it was a no, you say no, right? Because no is easy. But let's see what he says.
My budget, the $16.77 billion that I just passed, 41 alders, I believe, supported this budget. And we did all of that without raising property taxes. The evidence is in what I passed.
Now, this was so unpopular in Chicago that the city council unanimously threw it out, and Brandon Johnson had to find another way.
But first, breaking news at City Hall. Mayor Brandon Johnson's property tax hike is rejected by City Council.
It is unanimous. Every single alderperson voted down the mayor's $300 million property tax proposal. They say they have plenty of ideas. Now Mayor Brandon Johnson is going to be forced to listen to them.
Then the mayor of Chicago decided, hey, you know what? Let's just take out a payday loan. High interest rate, but we need this money now because we got to continue to take care of migrants.
All right, so let's take a closer look at the main issue, the structure of the deal. It's $830 million in borrowed funds for things like construction projects, transportation, building maintenance, but it will cost taxpayers at least $2 billion when all is said and done. Under the original plan, the city would make interest-only payments starting in 2027. But the city wouldn't make any principal payments until 2045. That's 20 years from now, majorly inflating costs.
So the mayor says, hey, we're going to borrow $800 million now. We'll pay back $2 billion. And by the time you have to pay the money back, it'll be 20 years from now. And don't worry, I won't be around. So raising property taxes was rejected. The payday loan to close this budget gap was rejected. They did take a payday loan out, but just for infrastructure. They actually didn't take the one out to close the budget gap. So you still have this budget gap. So Mayor Johnson went to a tried and true argument that Democrats have been using for years. Tax the rich.
The city is grappling with a $1.1 billion budget shortfall, and Mayor Johnson says one of the ways he plans to close that gap is to target the ultra-rich.
It's historically have been balanced on the backs of black, brown, and working people in Chicago. And it is time as a city that we reject that form of budgeting and then begin to pursue what I believe is more of a righteous budget.
Now, you know, I've done many videos on the mayor of Chicago, and I think this guy is a total disaster. I honestly think he is. And I am not the only one. The people in Chicago think he is a total disaster. Let me show you. Let's look at current poll numbers of the job approval rating of Mayor Johnson. Now, currently it stands at 26% in August. Now, this is a major increase because just a couple of months ago, it was in the single digits. His approval rating was something like 8%. And as you can see, all major racial groups disapprove of the mayor's job performance. Even the minority groups, the black and brown people that he says he's working for, they all say this is a horror show. Now, let's just keep it real. Brandon Johnson was a social studies teacher who became like some commissioner on some board and ran for mayor. And he played into that, I'm black, I'm going to give away all this money, I'm going to make the rich people pay extra money. And that's essentially how he got elected. And I don't think Mayor Johnson would be doing such a bad job if he just didn't face the facts of reality. Like, for instance, the police force there in Chicago is understaffed. They've been saying, hey, we need to hire more police officers. It's been a huge problem.
Men and women of CPD are putting in work, yet the reality, the department is down a significant number of sworn officers.
We are down. We're down close to 2,000 officers.
So now Trump is saying, hey, I want to send you help because crime's a problem in Chicago. So we got Chicago previously saying, hey, we have an officer shortage. We need more police. The federal government saying, hey, we'll send you some law enforcement officers. We'll send you some police to help augment what you're doing there so you can lower crime. And because obviously it's Trump who's a Republican, Brandon Johnson wants none of it. So he's confronted with that reality on Morning Joe. That seems to be a contradiction, right? Well, you need more cops, and the guy says, we'll send you more cops until you guys can figure it out. And now you're saying you don't want more cops and they won't help, but before you were saying they will help. Watch what happens. Just look at it.
I'm curious, would you also like to get federal funding to help put 5,000 more cops on the street in Chicago? Would that help drive down crime?
Okay, so I'm pausing it right here. You just heard Chicago screaming, we lost 2,000 cops. We're 2,000 cops short. Joe has just said, hey, federal funding can give you 5,000 more cops, right? You get the 2,000 you basketball and 3,000 more. He knows this. So the answer is an obvious yes, right? Yes, of course that would help. That would help solve a lot of our problems. But let's see what the mayor of Chicago says, because remember, it's Trump.
Well, look, policing by itself is not the full strategy.
No, I understand that. You've talked about the other things you want. Would 5,000 more police officers on the street in Chicago be helpful to go along with all of those social programs that a lot of cities are engaging in and having success with?
The answer is yes. Yes. It's not going to hurt. It's going to help a lot. Let's see what he says.
Well, look, here's the best way I can put it, Joe, is that in the 90s when I was in high school, we had 3,000 more police officers and we had 900 people being murdered every single year in Chicago. It's just not policing alone. Of course, we want more detectives.
I know it's not policing alone. But do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. Look,
okay,
I'm not saying that we don't.
That's not the question I asked.
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers, Joe, is what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? Would an additional 5,000 cops on the streets in Chicago help complement those programs to make Chicago safer?
You gotta laugh because first it was, would 5,000 more cops help reduce crime? Then was, would 5,000 cops be good for you? Now it's just like, all right, let's just cut all the BS. Let's see if the mayor of Chicago would even concede that 5,000 more police officers would help. We're not even talking about reducing crime. We're just talking about just helping, period. Would it help to have 5,000 more police officers? Let's see what he says.
Look, we are working hard to make sure that our police department is fully supported.
Of course we know the answer, but if you are in a party that supports defund, dismantle, no bail laws, reimagining the police, sending in the social workers instead, you can't answer that question. It's basic, simple, common sense.
I'm not a fan of the Sean Hannity, but he's right in this instance. The mayor literally can't say that having 5,000 more police officers would even help the city. Even though his police chief and the rest of them are begging for another 2,000, he says that 5,000 more police won't even help. He can't even concede that point. So at the end of the day, Chicago is in a horrible situation. They got this guy running the city. There's a $1.1 billion deficit to them paying that $700 or $600 billion, whatever the number is now, for migrant care. That's more than half of the deficit right there. Now, I'm not saying they would be in a great spot without the migrant crisis. They'd still be in some trouble, but you cannot tell me that this man hasn't essentially destroyed this city. So tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section, as always. Now, there are a lot more issues with Chicago. We're talking about pensions. We're talking about, there's a lot more involved in the budget. But you can't tell me that just an extra $700 thrown to the trash is not going to affect the budget in some way. And now when you're 1.1 billion in the hole, you could have spent that 600 to 700 million in a better way. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section. Say, Nate, you're too political. I hate you. The mayor of Chicago is a genius. I'm going to just disagree with you. My name is Nate the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace.